Get it away.
And I may mute myself sometimes too. Just to,
Oh, that's fine.
sometimes we get like feedback sometimes. It'd be crazy. Okay, there we go. Peace and blessings, family. We are back up in here with Our Lives Matter, looking at what's going on with Black girls and women and this violence and stuff that's going on. And I'm joined by my sister again, who's on the front lines. There's Sister Rosa, right?
Yep, Rosa.
Right on. So I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm just going to do all the technical stuff and moving stuff around.
All right. Hey, peace and blessings, family. Today, the first case I'm going to discuss, please excuse me, I'm kind of trying to adjust myself. First case I'm going to discuss is Jarrell Sam. She's a 25-year-old young mother of a 4-year-old son out of LaPlace, Louisiana. On April 5th, she frantically jumped from the trunk of a moving car. She was violently abducted and she was in the nude. So she was stripped. I believe she may have been, she was assaulted in her apartment. Her 4-year-old son was there when the incident occurred. And this happened about 3 in the morning on April 5th. The person who abducted her put her in the trunk of her own car, fled in her car, and he hit a guardrail. She was able to jump from the trunk of the car. She tried to escape, but he also jumped out of the car, chased her down into a field and shot her in the forehead. Yeah. They were able to find the person who did it, and the man who did it was a 35-year-old man. I believe he was 35. It was actually 2 men. It's a 35-year-old man who was the one who abducted her, took her from her apartment. They said it had to be someone that she knew and an acquaintance, because it was no forced entry. She let him into the apartment. It appears that she let him into the apartment. Now, he's 37. Corey Wallace was 37. He's been booked on first-degree murder, and he had an accomplice. The police were able, through video surveillance, they actually saw the second suspect following him in another vehicle following her. It was even, they really had something heinous planned for her. When they went to her apartment, the little boy was there. He was crying. The apartment had been doused in bleach. And, they were trying to get rid of the evidence. And in the seat of the passenger seat of the car of the second suspect who was arrested, he is a 36-year-old Black man. Both of these are Black males. Kevin Hollinger. It was a gas can. So it seems that they were going to murder her and set her afire. But, they ended up, one ended up murdering her. The one who murdered her, he ended up turning himself in, and probably he told, they were able to find out who the second suspect was through detailed police work. Now, sources are telling me that the person who killed her was stalking her. A young lady showed me screenshots and whatnot, and from her group that they were in, and he was stalking her. He had a girlfriend, and the girl, he actually lived in the apartment complex next to the young lady that he murdered, and he had a girlfriend. There are people who worked with both of them, who everybody's surprised that this happened to him. But another guy came on my page and was saying he's not shocked, because he said the guy had a bad attitude. He worked with him, and he said he almost got into physical altercations with the guy before. But like I said, luckily They've apprehended both of them. Now, the next story is about an 86-year-old Black lady out of Brooklyn, New York. Another story that has not gotten any kind of play. This happened back in March. They just arrested the woman. It was a white woman. I'm not able to get her picture, but the victim was an 86-year-old woman who was in the emergency room back in late March. And she kind of lost her bearings, and she had early onset dementia. Her name was Janie Marshall. She grabbed onto another patient's IV pole because she tried to regain her balance and orient herself. But the other patient, Cassandra Lundy, who is 32, they said she apparently became very angry with Miss Marshall because she said Miss Marshall had broken the 6 feet of personal space, and she actually punched her, and Miss Marshall hit her head and died 3 hours later. So she ended up dying of, blunt force trauma, closed head injury. And the thing about this Miss Cassandra Lundy is she has a history of beating and fighting elderly people. The first incident happened, that first incident with her happened back in 2018. And she had an older boyfriend. He was around, let me see, how old was he? He was like in his 60s. She punched and beat him up. And then she beat another 72-year-old a few months after that. So this lady has a violent history. She has drug problems, drug history. Her current husband, he said some crap like, well, it's hard to believe, she wouldn't do anything like that. Well, her history says otherwise. But again, they're not, I'm just sick that they did not, nobody's publicizing this. She has a history of 17 previous arrests. And that incident with her 61-year-old boyfriend happened back in 2016. She beat him because he wouldn't allow her to invite friends over for drugs. And the 27 claim was when she hit the older woman in the face. So this lady has a very, very sordid history with older people. She's 32 years old. So, and our next story is out of Jacksonville, Florida. It's a tragic story about a little girl, 5 years old, Miss Kiera Addison. She was struck by a bullet in a dispute over $180. The 2 men involved in that incident have also been arrested, but they just started shooting. And it says 4 people got into an altercation. I guess the 2 men are the ones who had the guns, and they started shooting at each other. The bullets hit the vehicle where the little Miss Kiera was in, and she got shot in the head. She was transported to the hospital in critical condition, but, unfortunately, she did not make it. And her 4-year-old sibling was also kind of injured from the debris, but he's okay. But the sheriff is, they're very upset about this. And, we lost a child over $180. And, so they have apprehended the 2 men who were responsible for her death in that. Now, the next case is a twofold. It's kind of it's a many layered story. Happened in Jersey City. A young lady, Miss Stephanie Jacques, she's 17. She was actually shot somebody. She was walking home from her aunt's home with food coming from the grocery store one night. Somebody just started shooting, and moments later, she was on the ground and she was bleeding from a gunshot wound to her thigh. Now, they rushed her to Jersey City Medical Center. She was treated and released. Even though her mother said, even though she felt lightheaded, she told them that her daughter was still feeling lightheaded. She collapsed at home and was pronounced dead 15 hours after being shot in the drive-by, after they released her from the hospital. Now, the doctor told them the previous night that people survived being shot and they sent her home. But her mother, listening to the doctors, even though she felt that intuition, she still didn't feel right, but she went ahead and took her home. Her mom and aunt said she woke up that next morning, went to the bathroom, and was still complaining about feeling lightheaded. But then by that time, it was too late. She collapsed in her mom's arms, and they believe she died right there. Now, of course, Jersey City Medical Center is not going to comment about that. And the reason I say that this is a mini layer, because this still speaks to medical apartheid that's going on in our community. This speaks to, medical racism or medical apartheid. I feel that it was too early to release her. A person, I'm a nurse, so a person who complains about feeling lightheaded, that is a sign of blood loss, significant blood loss. I don't know if they ran blood tests on her, or, what we call a H&H, which are hemoglobin and hematocrit. They would have been able probably to tell instantly what her blood levels were. So, in this instance, we have two things. We have a killer that's on the loose, because, had she not sustained this gunshot wound, she'd still be with us, of course. But then you have the added layer of her possibly being discharged too early. And I'm sure the hospital is going to say that they were inundated with all of this coronavirus stuff that's going on. And I really do feel that a lot of issues now are being pushed aside, and people are going to fall through the cracks because the focus is going to be on this coronavirus. But the only thing that the police transmission from their scanners, they said that the people fled on foot and ditched their guns on Linden Avenue, which is not too far from where she was shot. So they found the weapons, but they do not know, who it is. I'm sure they're going to try and, if they have surveillance cameras, traffic cameras, or what have you, maybe they can, scale those back and look. But at this time, no one's in custody. So unfortunately, like I said, the family is going to have to deal with two layers, malpractice and also murder. So, it's just sad. And our next story is a missing person, a young lady. She's been missing since 2016. Family reached out to me. Of course, I'm here in Arkansas, but her family reached out, and they just, again, want this story to be out there as much as possible. Her name is Mercedes Tolliver. And in 2016, she had graduated from high school, and she was going to take the ASVAB because she wanted to go into the Air Force. Well, one night, again, they said she was walking from her mom's to her aunt's, or the aunt to the mom's house. Anyway, it was a short distance. Prescott is a small town here in Arkansas, very, very small. I believe something like maybe 3,000 people. So it's a very small community. She was last seen right after midnight on December 17th on Roston Road in Prescott. And, nobody's heard from her since. Her phone, her mom said that they would call her, and her phone kept going straight to voicemail. The mom said she figured that her daughter was out of minutes. So when she had a chance later that day, she knew, she was going to load more minutes on her phone. But when she tried to call again that weekend, there was nothing. And she said it's not like her daughter to not have her cell phone on. And, her mother says she always had that cell phone in her hands 24/7, always on social media, always listening to music. She just couldn't get through her day without it, just like most, young folks nowadays. And Dateline NBC actually featured her story on their news program. But, there's still no additional information. And, of course, they always say, is it a possibility that she ran away? Well, her mother said it's not her character to run away. She was a very good student. She never was into trouble, very, studious. She wanted to go to the Air Force. She always called her mother to let her know what was going on. And, nearly 4 years have passed. And, of course, they're very frustrated with the lack of answers with her disappearance. But Prescott Police Chief says that the case is still open and they're looking into all tips they received. But they said they haven't had any leads in some times. That they had some leads in the first month, but after that, everything just dropped off. So at this time, it's just a cold case. But, the family is really, really hoping that somebody out there, has some information and can reach out to the police chief out in Prescott. And the Prescott Police Department number is 870-887-6779. So if anybody, has any leads or want to share the story, the family would greatly appreciate that. Now, our next story is another story out of Jacksonville. This happened on March 19th. This young lady is Anandi Weish. She is 17 years old, out of Jacksonville, Florida. Incidentally, right at the Christmas time, she happened to be downtown when the news was down there with the Christmas tree lighting. And it was a chance interview. She was a junior, and she told the news reporter all she wanted for Christmas. She was hoping that Santa would bring her a car, and she got her wish. And 3 months later, she was shot to death in that same car. The tragedy is she was out on a date, and it happened about 7 p.m. that on the 4700 block of Portsmouth Avenue in Jacksonville. And it says, they said that a car pulled up in front of them, and 2 men got out their car and just started shooting at the car. Now, she died, but her date survived the attack. She died at the scene. He's saying he doesn't know anything. In these cases, it just sounds so odd when, usually the woman always gets killed, even if the male may have been the intended target. But this case just sounds so odd. She was not a bad girl. She was not one who was hanging out in the streets. She was, a good girl from, all intents and purposes, studious, looking forward to going to college, looking forward to graduation. And she had got her car out on this date and just, they say that it was, the police aren't saying much. I'll just say that. Police aren't saying much, but they are saying that if you have any information, of course, call the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office or First Coast Crime Stoppers. The numbers are located on my page. But it's just a heinous crime. Somebody just pulled up in front of them. 2 men jump out and just started firing up her car. Okay, now our next story is, are you there? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Okay, well, I'm going to go on to our next story. And the next story is out of Sumter County, South Carolina. And a young woman, Rachel Ravenel, 44, she was found in a vehicle, in a burning vehicle with a man. The man died from blunt force trauma, and she was shot. And their bodies were found on March 23rd. And the suspect is still on the loose. The police have no leads in this case. You know, they don't know. They were her and a man were found in a burning vehicle. And her family, has no answers. They don't know, from what I can see, they don't know too much. I do know she was in a motorcycle club, so sometimes, those kind of, things happen. We know how some motorcycle clubs are. I don't know if something may have been going on with that, those, I'll just say that social clubs like that sometimes have a history of drugs and different kind of illicit things. And I mean, unfortunately, women, when we're around those kind of men who hang in certain situations, we're putting ourselves at risk. This is not to victim blame, but this is just some FYI. Just be aware. Don't put yourself in certain circumstances, if at all possible. Hopefully her killers will be found and justice can be served for her family as well as the other victim in this crime. Now, my next case is another young lady out of Helena, Georgia. She is 14 years old. Now, they believe this was an accidental shooting. And my next two stories, I want to bring awareness to. Please, if you have guns in your home, please put them up, lock them up. You can get gun locks from the sheriff's department, from your local police department, but we cannot allow these guns to just be laying around our homes. The police are saying that it seems like it was an accidental shooting because there were two juveniles and another family member of the teen girl. They don't know. The preliminary investigation says the shooting involved two juveniles and a family member of the teen girl, and one of the three accidentally shot her. The investigation is still ongoing, and they're not sure of what charges are going to be brought forth, and they're still trying to discuss the findings with the district attorney. But the point is, again, please lock your guns up at home if you have them. We're having too many babies, too many children dying from these guns that are just left out. Just like in this next story, a 4-year-old, he accidentally shot and killed himself. And it's just terrible. He's 4 years old. He went in the basement and he found the gun. And when he found the gun, he fired it. And now he's no longer here. So far, no charges have been brought up against any family member in his case either. So again, just be aware of these guns. If your children is in a house or going over someone's house that have guns, make sure that those guns are put up. And if they're not, you just can't put your child in that situation. Children are curious. The younger they are, the more curious they are. And then the older they are, the more invincible they think they are. So you have to be careful with these guns around our babies. I understand we live in perilous times and, folks have to protect themselves, but don't be a fool. Now, in closing, I want to say this. This is something that I had on my page about there was a story I had posted about the woman who was married to Marvin Gaye. I can't think of her name, it slips my mind. Anyway, she has published a book, and it's a few years old, but nonetheless, I post about abuse that goes on in our community, regular folks, celebrities, doesn't matter to me. Anyway, she had talked about the abuse she endured in her marriage to Marvin Gaye. And she was 17 when she started fooling around with the man. And he was twice her age. He was 34. And it was a lot of orgies, cuckolding that was going on with Marvin. It seems that he had a history of impotence or whatever, just a lot of sick stuff going on with him. And she was, she was abused mentally, physically, psychologically. Someone came on my page and, they're always saying, oh, why do they wait to tell their story now? Why didn't she tell her story then? Or she need to shut up. She could have kept that to herself. So I made a post and I want to say this, Black women and girls, your story is yours to tell no matter when you tell it. Don't let others demean you by trying to convince you that you're tearing a brother down. Yet it's totally fine for them for us to be torn down by them and destroyed by these same brothers, and we must do so in silence. It is not our job to be the PR person for anyone other than ourselves. Speak up as often as you please to anyone who may need to hear it. You may save another Black woman or girl from suffering the same fate. And the quote I had on my page was, you own everything that happened to you. Tell your stories. If people wanted you to write warmly about them, they should have behaved better. So, that's how I want to close it out. Don't worry about tearing somebody down. If that's your truth, speak it. And as the quote said, if folks want you to say good things about them, then they need to act better and act accordingly. It's not, a problem with her saying it now. It takes years sometimes. Some people never speak up, but sometimes it takes years before people muster up the courage to speak. And I want all Black women and girls to know that it's okay if you don't say something as soon as it happens. But once you do, don't let other people shut you down.
Right on. Well, sis, thank you again for another weekly update. Y'all, if you're watching this, share this information. We have to report on our own. We gotta step up, because this has to stop. This really has to stop. And I know for some people, you may be feeling some kind of way, but you should feel some kind of way when you sit there and do nothing and just ignore it because you want to just hide the dirty laundry. Like, no, we have to take it out and clean it. We gotta deal with it. And so thank you so much, Rosa, for doing the work that you do. And I hope you still remain safe with your job. Thank you for your service. I feel like you in the military, you're a nurse these days.
I know.
I'm just saying thank you so much. But also on the top of you being a nurse, you also keep up what's happening with Black girls and women as it pertains to violence and things that happen against us or to us. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. And it's always a pleasure.
Right on. So I'll check in with you next week.
All righty. Bye-bye. Peace, everybody.